Welcome back, and joining me for a closer look at what's played out on the market scene today is Shaun Dendere from Trive Investments. Thank you so much for your time, Shaun. Let's start off with that GDP print that we got for the first quarter. Really, the economy practically remaining at a standstill in the first quarter. And actually, if I remember correctly, the growth in the fourth quarter of 2024 was revised down. What kind of growth are we seeing right now?
Firstly, thank you for having me. I think looking at the GDP print, it is really a sign of the times when we go back to, the tariff wars and the uncertainty that's coming with that. And even speaking to the GDP number, I think it is actually the lowest that's come in post-COVID, which is quite concerning. I think the positive side is that, we are not seeing a contraction, but most of our major GB producers such as mining and manufacturing have really been hammered. And I really do believe that, there might be a slowdown in the background as, companies don't know what is going to happen, with this tariff environment that we are experiencing as we stand.
Yeah, and indeed, it's quite a sober picture when we actually refer back to levels that we last saw during a COVID-19, which really tells you just the kind of pressure that we are under. And of course, even yesterday we saw with the ABSA PMI that manufacturing was just not going to be good. And actually, I guess then manufacturing filters through to even places like China, as we saw with the PMI coming in dismally on that front, because, as you said, sign of the times and obviously the tariff uncertainty. Well, Shaun, let's take a look at some of the company news that came out of the JSE. Quite a surprise to me today when we got the announcement from Process that Chief Investment Officer Irvin Tu is stepping down from the role. He, of course, has been a key figure in the Process and Naspers story. How does this shape the company?
To be honest, I think that there isn't too much of the changes going to come on from Process from that perspective.
Yeah.
Purely because as much as he's stepping down, from his current role, he is still staying on as an advisor in the business. So I think we're still going to see the same momentum. There isn't really a shock in the system. Even with their share price today, post that announcement, there wasn't really too much movement there. It's been a bit flat, yes, a bit down, but nothing hectic as, normally when there is a change in leadership, a surprise in the change in leadership, the share price tends to have a field day.
Yeah, and of course, also really quite interesting to note is that he has given the fairly new CEO Fabricio Bloisi props on the shape that the company has taken in the last while. And as we're talking about momentum, the financial services company Momentum hosted its Capital Markets Day today. And this is, of course, a day after it posted its 9-month operational update. We did see the share climbing in morning trade about 4%. What did you get out of investor engagement there?
You know what, I think Momentum currently is in a good space in terms of as a group, they've really managed to, let's call it waver through these tough times. I see that new business is growing a bit lower. However, the new business that they're bringing in is coming in with a bit more value. The equity markets have also been really great, at least for the past quarter, as we all know, despite the uncertainty. That has really boded well for Momentum, and I see that the headline earnings have reached 4.8 billion, which then gave them approval from the Prudential Authority, so the South African Reserve Bank, in order for them to implement their share buyback policy of R1 billion, where they're expecting a return on equity there of about 20% in 2027. So I do believe that, it's all positive news, especially on a day where, our GDP came in a bit flat there. At least, some of the local companies are riding that tide in a positive manner.
Yeah, indeed. And I will be having a conversation shortly after 6 with the CEO, Jeanette Murray, on the strategic direction of the company. Well, let's get on to other company news. BAT, British American Tobacco, gave us a trading update today and actually starting off strong, saying that revenue is exceeding guidance. Different and interesting dynamics there when you look at the different categories and regulatory spaces. What story are these numbers telling us?
I think it has really been tough, especially when people moving away from cigarettes, looking at, like you mentioned, different regulations and different taxes in different countries that have been really affecting tobacco companies such as BAT, but for them to actually start getting into that revenue growth perspective, it's purely diversification, as we see that they are now moving into the more vape industry, the more nicotine pouches, etc., and kind of shifting away from traditional tobacco such as cigarettes and so on and so forth. So it is an interesting ploy to see, because I do see that different regulators are also starting to clamp down on their alternative products, and also the illicit market is also starting to join also on the alternative products, which also affects their bottom line there. So it is interesting. Let's see how it unfolds, and for them, in my opinion, their biggest concern really will be just the regulatory environment in different regions that they are operating in.
All right. Well, Shaun, let us get to your stock pick for today. What are you hanging your hat on?
So today I'm going with Robex as a short to medium term. Came out with some solid results yesterday, actually, whereby their revenue grew by 22% or just under 22% on that front. They have cash reserves of over 20. I mean, they're not cash reserves. Their order book is over the 20 billion mark. So we are seeing that there is demand for their products. There is demand in this space, that they're operating in. They're also quite a diverse material handling, mining type company, etc. So it's a bit of a risky one, but just looking at the numbers at play and how they're also operating in challenging times, I do think there's a bit of upside going on that side.
Right. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights on what has moved investors' money today, Shaun. That was Shaun Dendere from Trive Investments.